Good morning. We're going to call this to order. As soon as we're online, we'll get started. Oh, we're on. Great, thank you. All right, well, good morning, everyone. We have public comments this morning. We're going to start with Cynthia Duvall, Bob Highland, and then Anita Buck. We've got a few more after that. Welcome back, Cynthia.
Very briefly, I noted that in 3 years since PUP became involved with the dog park conversation, there's not been one discussion of whether this design is something dogs will actually like. Thank you.
Great. Bob Highland.
Morning, President North, Vice President Lee, Commissioners. I don't have much to add today either, except this. Any member of the public could go through the archives of your meetings over the last several years and listen to statements such as, we've heard from many people for the dog park and many people against the dog park. And I just want to put into this record again out loud, as will be presumably in your minutes for this meeting next month, that you've received a signature with well over 2,000 signatures opposing this project. You've received hundreds of letters from people who oppose this project, about a dozen or so at last check of people who support it. So it's just disingenuous for this body to have, over the last several years, publicly state open in the sunshine that there's some sort of equivocal support on both sides. It's just not true. It reminds me of our 45th president, who, when articulating his thoughts on what happened in Charlottesville, saying there was good people on both sides. It's just not, it's not reality. It's disingenuous. And as a city, I think we need to do better. So as a body and as public servants and as good people that I know you are, I'm calling you to do the right thing and to improve the integrity of this institution. All of our parks, we ought to be able to come together and work in good faith. That's all.
Thank you. Anita Buck, and then we've got Mary Kokoshis. Got that wrong.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm sure you're all as thrilled as I am, just so we talk about the dog park. I'd like to talk about accessibility in this project, specifically the accessibility that has been stripped out of the project. I do not presume to speak for people with disabilities, but as a person who's done a lot of fundraising on a lot of projects that have had accessibility components, the way this is supposed to happen is that the accessibility is built in from the beginning, and it's integral to the project, and it's sacred. I mean, it's you can't take it out. You don't take it out. And so, you know, I have objected to this dog park many times. I do not like this project, but my comfort, silver lining for this, is that at least if the damn thing is built, it will be accessible to people who need it. But now, silly me, we discover there's no handicap parking. There's, you know, the surface is going back to sod, which is not acceptable. I mean, there's a 12% slope in the park, that this is not accessible. And so, you know, the time for this kind of back and forthing is long past. The parks have been marketing this project on accessibility. You have raised funds on accessibility. Some people have probably donated primarily because of accessibility. And this is just not a good situation. But the worst thing about this is not just that, you know, some donors might get mad and want their money back. The horrible thing is the message you're sending to people with disabilities, who are the very people you wanted to have access to the park. And these are people who struggle with accessibility every day. And what you're saying to them by taking the accessibility back out of the project because it's too expensive and because it doesn't work, because, you know, you can measure, you know, Brookline in time. You know, you're saying we didn't care enough about accessibility for you to plan it from the beginning. You know, we did not bring in an expert who might have corrected us and helped us.
Thank you, Anita. All right, Marie Kay, and then we've got Cynthia McCarthy and Sherry Frost.
Morning, it's Marie Kokosis.
Thank you.
I'm here today representing the Miami Women's Hair Club. We have over 5,000 members in Southwest Pennsylvania, going all the way to Portsmouth, and over 1,000 members in the city of Cincinnati. And our concern is that there are many issues that you all know about in Burnett Woods. We've got sewage issues, we've got a lake that needs to be drained, there's some trails we understand that need work, and that's where this money should go. Instead of to a dog park. Our concern is that the funding that you have should go to make the repairs to Burnett Woods, not put money to this new project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cynthia, welcome back.
Thank you.
No instruments?
I'm here to speak in opposition of the planned dog park in Burnett Woods. This bespoke dog park you planned in a Coreyville location against their will for your special Clifton friends is now a parody of a dog park. 2 months ago, I spoke about the cuts you made to the plans and the dog park was still 25% over budget. Instead of just stopping and realizing that a dog park is a poor fit for this site, you trimmed further amenities, including the accessibility touted so proudly at the beginning, and also the dog play features. At this point, it's truly a lose-lose situation. You are ruining the beloved meadow for a fenced-in hardscape, bearing no resemblance to the rendering still posted on the Cincinnati Parks Foundation website and still being used for fundraising. Had I donated any money to this project, I would be feeling gypped. Speaking of fundraising, is it common to fundraise for years, not reach the goal, and yet still enter into a contract to complete the project? Is it common to enter into a contract when you don't know the actual materials and scope of work? I find it curious that you're allowed to substantially change the scope of work and yet not put it back out for competitive bidding. I also find it curious you have removed several line items such as tree preservation, planting trees, and installing benches without accounting for what that cost will be to the Parks Department. Where will those resources come from? What will have to be sacrificed for the parks to provide this labor and materials rather than the contractor? It's time to stop the dog park in Burnett Woods and go back to the drawing board, with community engagement being your first step. Thank you.
Great. We've got Sherry Frost and then John Whedon.
Good morning.
Welcome back, Sherry.
I wish I didn't have to keep coming here. I went to the Owl's Nest Community Engagement Session, which was amazing. And I understand it was the third where the community got together and they were able to throw out some ideas and there was a back and forth answering of questions. And I'm sad that the stakeholders of Burnett Woods didn't get the same opportunity. So I'm asking again, if maybe we could start over, get the community together to see if there's still an interest in this type of amenity. Now that we have more science, we realize the dangers of dog parks. Maybe less people are even interested in having a dog park. But maybe we start again, pick a new site that is able to be ADA accessible if you move forward and listen to the community and the people who love this park. It feels very, I don't want to say abusive, but the way that volunteers and stakeholders have been treated on this project, we feel less. That's not okay for people in your position. So think again and maybe start again. Thank you.
Sherry. John.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Appreciate the chance to be here. I came in this morning to say thank you. My family and I have lived in Clifton for the past 20 years. And the news of the new dog park in Burnett Woods is very exciting to us. For several years, we've taken our Labrador, his name is Hero, down to Washington Park Dog Park. And what a beautiful place that is. I encourage anybody to go down there, check it out. We love it there. You know, Hero can run and roam, and we meet people from all walks of life, all circumstances, and we have the opportunity to make a real connection. How many other opportunities do we have that during our each and every day? So dog parks are a beautiful thing. We've been so excited. In the past 2 years, we've been involved in raising over $25,000 for the effort. And those funds are with Cincinnati Parks Foundation today. Our fundraisers were attended by over 150 people total. The first was a party at the Trailside Nature Center in Burnett Woods. And the second was a golf outing at Avon Fields last summer. It was important for me to be here today, especially to share our story with the newer board members. You need to know about the excitement that the dog park has for people in Clifton, and I think beyond. So thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you for everything you do for our city. Appreciate it.
I would like to follow up in response to some things that we've heard. There's a shared love for Burnett Woods in this room. I want to be clear that that is the case both with this board and with everyone that's here. And I appreciate your continued engagement with Burnett Woods. There will be continued opportunities to engage. As you may have seen in our package, the staff is moving forward with a plan to renovate the bandstand. And I have asked Jason for the staff to consider what improvements we may be able to fit into a budget of the overall area within the bandstand that includes all the area in which you would watch a band. So we're excited about that. I do want to address, you know, this may be a bit quirky, but we were recently in Alaska and we went to a significant education session on sled dogs. And there were many dog experts there that talked about the longstanding role of dogs in the world, that they all have a job to do. And it's interesting to me because we now treat dogs as pets and they're not, you know, carrying anyone on their sled, but they have a real role in supporting mental health in our community. This is the reason why dog parks have become important. This is the reason why the Trust for Public Land has a measure for dog parks in urban communities, is providing a significant asset in spaces. This is a place where Cincinnati Park ranks low. So I want to be clear that there is a discipline around our parks, our park board assessing how we continue to maintain our position as one of the top parks systems in the country. I do want to address, I would ask Director Barron to address accessibility. We've changed this. We have made some changes to this dog park in effort to make this an outstanding investment, an outstanding asset for Cincinnati citizens. We've also had to address budget issues and just physical constraints of the site. So can you tell us how the site will be accessible and any limitations that you have concerns about? Of course.
Let me flip to where it's at in our packet here. So it is page 24 in the packet. So the most recent changes that have happened since our last meeting is that we have worked to address that 12% slope that is on the north side of the dog park. We've been working with Human Nature and Bruce, the contractor, to select out materials. Because of that 12% slope, we've decided not, or we're now recommending not to 24.
Thank you.
Now recommending not to do the sidewalk proposed and instead switch to, and then given the motion that you made last week with the support of Commissioner Nair to explore a non-turf alternative. So we've come back and we've worked with Human Nature to identify a decomposed granite that will work either with a grid system underneath it or with like an organic binding agent to like keep it nice and flat. That will now make up about 2,300 square feet of the dog park. So a bigger area than we had at the last time we talked about this, that will all be smooth and flat and accessible. We've also worked with Bruce to make sure that we can level out some of that 12% slope on the one on the northern side and start to make that a little smoother so that it won't be quite as slopey in the decomposed granite area. There will be some sod in the park now is what we're proposing, which is, as we've talked about, just a cost constraint. The turf came back too expensive. And then we now have the consensus around moving to a decomposed granite.
Jason, I just want to jump in for context on the slope difference that they're talking about between the top end of ADA compliance from any longitudinal direction is 8% with a grade. East drive in every direction to go 5%. So this was never in that situation. If you go to Lytle Park and go from the Autograph Hotel to the fountain, that brand new sidewalk, that is 7%. So the difference in what we're talking about in grade is about a 6-inch drop that Bruce can do with one blade full of dropping the grade 6 inches with one bulldozer blade. So those are easily adjusted in the field. When we proposed the walk last time, I qualified that knowing that the cross slope was well greater than 2% put in for quantity purposes. This iteration that Jason's showing now will probably be less than 8% in every direction, given that we have plenty of room to make up that difference between the side. So just so you're all aware, that can easily be dropped in that granite well below the 12%.
And the decomposed granite, I know I wasn't totally familiar about it. There's a lot of times you walk on something you don't even, know what you're walking on. But if you go down to the Moorland Lager House, we have 2 patio areas kind of right by the stage and then right by the restaurant that we're getting too much activity on the grass. And so we changed that out to decomposed granite several years ago. But those are both nice and smooth, very flat and accessible for folks to walk on. It's also used on UC's campus. I'm not an expert on UC's campus. I always get lost. But there's several plaza areas that they use it as again, for a high traffic area to still provide a nice flat smooth surface. Additionally, somebody brought up the play features. We did get rid of the domed play features because those required turf to be on it. I was just at the Burnett Woods Dog Park, or the Mount Washington Park. Thank you, sir. The Washington Park Dog Park the other night. And the mounds they have there have turf on it, so the dogs, they kind of climb up on like concrete. And so those didn't make sense anymore once we found out there was consensus to remove the turf. But we're still fully planned to explore some more natural play pieces, could be maybe a log. There are plenty of companies that make those kind of things. To concerns about the cost of us doing the tree plantings ourselves or installing the benches ourselves or other things. As I said at the last meeting, we'll fully account for those, and those will be that accounting for how much the total, no one's trying to say the project will only cost the 381 that Bruce has proposed. We will fully show what that is. What we realized, and I gave the example of when my wife and I redid our condo, we got our first bid back and hit the floor, and we were imagining debt for the rest of our lives. And then what we realized in working with the contractors, that we bought all the toilets and we bought all the sinks and we bought all the tile. It's just there waiting for them. All of the markup that's on top of that goes into allowances for things, them buying them and them purchasing however they want to. We got to specifically select, and we saved tens of thousands of dollars of buying that stuff ourselves. And so it's the exact same thing here, which is we're pulling those out to make the contract with Bruce lower, but we're also going to experience significant savings for the budget of the overall project. But we will fully disclose that. Everything will be totally out in the open.
Jason, I want to say one more thing about the roadway. I'm a transportation engineer. It wasn't anything that we took out of the project unknowingly. When I consulted DOTE engineers over there, they advised me not to do this yet. You can't. If you look around the city, there's very few places other than next to a resident where they strike a handicap spot on the roadway, which is out of compliance. You always, if I'm going to strike it, it's going to be within ADA compliance. Many of our streets are never going to be because they exceed 10% in a hilly city. So you really don't ever strike an ADA compliant spot on the street. When I told them we were thinking about doing that, he cautioned me for sight distance. So if I have a wheelchair coming across Brookline, the one side of the sidewalk that I could have rammed into another, it's very likely that someone is going to hit right there. So we opted to build this first. See where those transitions really happen organically to make sure we have the best sight distance when we actually put something in. Talk to DOT about putting a raised crosswalk in here, which would make the crosswalk of Brookline actually ADA compliant, which means that you're seeing them start to do now the concrete raised crosswalks that we can adjust to make actually ADA compliant. Where that goes is the big question. Should it go below the dog park towards the trail side or above the dog park? Where is the best sight distance? I can't tell that until the dog park is in use sometimes. And since we have that luxury of time in this situation, I'd rather not mess it up. They have it done in 10 minutes. So that's the reason why that was pulled and why we're adjusting and modifying that, as we know it's the best use for the park. So just to speak a little bit more to how we come to those decisions. Jason, come up. Shut up.
Any other discussion on the dog park that you wanted to have or that anyone here wants to have before we move on to our next agenda item?
I think this pretty much covers it. These are the updates that we've made since the last meeting. We're still working for final pricing and a final selection of the decomposed granite that we're going to propose using here. And we'll bring that back to you and once again, talk about it publicly and let you guys decide how you want to move forward.
Great. Well, I appreciate all the efforts that are going into the accessibility component. I know that you talk firsthand with many families that are concerned about accessibility, and let's just continue to prioritize it and make adjustments as makes sense to do so. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, you're up. We usually don't get to you this early in the meeting.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Everybody. Have one action item for you all today, and Jason and I have a couple together, right? Mount Airy. First one I want to discuss with you all is the Ludlow DNR service garage. That is underway right now. Pulled about 9 inches of blacktop off the area where that slab is going to be. In the soil borings that we got, which were 3 and limited when we did the borings for the building and making sure everything was going to be good, there was concerns about some fill in the areas. After excavation of the footers, some of that was realized in a couple spots to where they dug and overdug about 9 inches in a few spots. Furthermore, in setting the actual finished floor height of the building, they realized there was a little bit of a bust and that water could come in on one corner of the building if we didn't raise up those footers. So the combination of those two things basically means we want to raise the wall height a little bit for that floor so we don't get any back drainage into the building. It amounts to about a $3,000 fix in material of concrete to deepen the footers to be able to realize that difference. The footer and the floor are one piece in this situation. There's no chance to raise everything up. You kind of have to do it all at once. It amounts to about 10 yards of concrete, that difference in depth. So one thing to note with this project is we came to you in January for approval of it and it had no contingency in it, essentially because of the high cost to begin with and wanting to hold Bruce's feet to the fire and not, create any more exorbitant costs than it already was. I'm coming back before you today, realizing that there's probably going to be a couple of small things in the completion of this building, one of which is before you today. So I'm asking you for approval of a $9,225 contingency for the remainder of this project, which brings the total to $300,000. That's why I picked that number. We're going to utilize $3,000 of that right now to pay for this additional concrete material. Bruce is going to meet us in the middle and they're doing all of the forming for free on their dime. We're just paying straight costs for the concrete. So I'm coming before you today to ask for that. So hopefully when a doorknob needs changed or something else for the remainder of this project, I don't have to come back. So P&D is asking for approval today for a $9,225 contingency, of which $3,000 will be used for change order 1 for the Ludlow garage. Interestingly, just to let you know, from the Reading Rose sale, we are aware that there's still $85,000 free from that number. So this will come from those funds, the same as the rest of the money from Reading Rose.
Motion or discussion?
To say that amounts to a 3% contingency, which I would love to have most projects come in at single digit contingency. I'd be delighted. Private, public sector, pick your spot. It's still a very, very, very modest contingency. So.
Great.
Thank you all.
Is that a motion?
And therefore I move approval for the 9,200.
Yeah.
No.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
I'm going to move to the bike skills course, if that's all right with everybody.
Very exciting.
Yes, we're 40 about it.
Thank you.
And it's, yes.
By the way, all thanks to Kate for adding in all the numbers. They look great. Everyone really helping us navigate it.
Before we get into that, how's the temperature in this room?
Freezing.
My teeth are chattering.
I turned it up once, but it came back on. So
Okay. I am like, got a deep chill.
now it's just off. We're good.
Feel that peace.
So I guess I'll start that there's 3 major project components going on at one time, one of which involves this action item. This is the design build for the bike skills itself. Kate has a picture up right now of an overall rendering of what those trails may look like. See a lot of dirt paths, probably reinforced with decomposed granite or something very similar. Vein that we were just talking about for the dog park. That's a similar and common material used for that. Jason's shown a few pictures in previous meetings of some of the amenities that'll go with that park, some ramps and some curves that will allow for some pretty cool stuff and some pretty cool training and learning on the bike skills course. I also think that they're doing some sort of adaptive course for children with disabilities somewhere near the comfort station. So we've been talking with the American Ramp folks a little bit about that and how we can integrate some ADA accessibility spots specifically. All in all, we're coming before you today to accept, I believe, money from the foundation towards
entering into a contract with American Ramp Company to design, build this portion of the park.
Where is the comfort station?
Comfort station is halfway down that tree line. Basically where the tree sticks out.
You can see a bit of the roof here. It's like right about here, right, Joel?
Yes, sir. That's right.
It's right in there. It's really tucked back into.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's actually an overlook at the very end of the site.
Can you give us a idea about the size of this course? How big is this area? How many feet are the
I would say it's 500 feet long
500?
and everything. Yep. Every bit of that.
Pretty big. It's a real nice big area that's just currently just open space.
At least.
Yeah.
Yes. Nice open area, minimal grading to drain everything. We're gonna put an ADA compliant path, again, from ADA compliant spots in the parking lot. All the way to the comfort station. So that'll be less than 5%. We've drawn all that in-house and we're gonna hand that to American Ramp in conjunction so that they'll know where they can tie in to continue compliance into the course. So all that stuff will be done in conjunction with them.
And this installation includes that bike trail that goes around?
Outside, I believe, so yes.
I suspect this is going to be very popular.
Agreed. So the two projects that P and D is doing in conjunction with the design build for the bike course are this ramp that is in-house and then also rehabilitation of that comfort station. And it's not quite the scale that you're going to see for Lido Park. It's not going to be a $400,000 fix, but it will be fixing some of the shakes on the roof, fixing some of the drainage and bringing ADA compliant entry into the building. It's just grass up to that comfort station right now. Bringing this pathway down will come all the way in. Andrew and Chris are already realigning the bathrooms to make the stalls and the sinks all ADA compliant. With some good recommendations, we're looking into some stools and things as well to make sure that height is good for everybody that may use this course, because we know there's going to be a bunch of little kids out there as well. So all of those things are really all we're looking to do for the comfort station. That is on a septic that needs to be pumped a couple times a year. Probably will need to become pumped a couple times a year. Doesn't have to be pumped that often right now. Increase in when coming out here, it will have to be. We talked about making the concrete thick enough for them to do that, but it's kind of a wasted cost. We're really just going to have a truck come back there and service that a couple of times a year when it makes sense, because we'll have plenty of play to be able to do that when it's dry enough for them to do it. Not worth the extra expense in concrete to do that and make it thick enough for a 25,000-pound truck. So those are the things we're thinking through right now as we're helping design that. Isn't I miss anything with that?
Nope. Yeah, the two projects that are funded are one, the restrooms that Joel talked about, and then the other one is to do some, to do that path. And then in doing the restrooms, we're also going to look at the benches at the overlook and make sure those are nice and kind of refurbished. Make sure there's no major masonry problems that need to be taken care of. Those two projects were funded well before I started. So there's a line item for about $225,000 total, $250,000 total in the budget already for those two projects. In January of 23, the board approved $140,000 towards this project. In June of this year, we requested or we accepted or requested a $110,000 grant from the foundation who's worked with CORE to raise those funds, which brings us to 247 for this project. And so with approval today, we will submit this to purchasing. The foundation's made a condition of their donation that we use this design by American or by Progressive Bicycle Ramps, which they work with CORE to design. And so assuming everything goes well with purchasing, we'll then take it to that company and we'll get them under contract. And then we'll see how long it takes them to get us in order to be done. So we've heard it could be anywhere for up to a year, but we've also heard maybe we can get slotted in over the winter. So we'll see.
Great. When will you need our approval for anything?
If you approve this today, the $247 bid that's before you, we'll be moving forward and then we'll just be updating you on when to come out and see how it looks.
So you're asking for approval to enter into contract with them today?
Correct. Yep.
Great.
Move it to purchasing and move it forward. We will then, if we have any single contract for those other two projects, whether it's the path, the bathrooms, or the overlook, those might be a bunch of $20,000 projects. But if any of them are like, we're going to bring somebody in for over 50, just as we'll bring those to you to approve as well. But we're just starting to make those plans and we're not ready to put those out for bid. But we expect with this one, we need to get in line because they have a schedule that they've got. With the other ones, we'll put those out to bid when we're ready, but we're hoping they align. So we'll cut a single ribbon and everything will be open, ready to go.
We hope the pathway is akin to the Rapid Run Pathway project where it's somebody like one of our term pavement contractors can come in and do that under those stipulations and scope. It's easy and we've set it up better than we've ever set up a P&D project before. So for success, so looking to use them and potentially use Megan through the TPA to do some of the refurbishments to the building at this time, but we could change scope and bid strategy as needed. I would expect we would come back to you by the end of the year with both of those projects.
I just had one question around contingency, since that was a topic recently. Now, with progressive bike ramps, this is a fully developed bid set and a hard bid, so maybe it's not necessary, and maybe contingency would live in other parts of the project or scope that way, but that was gonna be my only modification, proposed modification is, do we want to approve this amount and 5% contingency or some amount of contingency just to reduce friction between here and completion? If we can do that, I certainly, wherever we can, endorse that.
So within their bid, Commissioner, they negate a few things and they ensure that they're going to do a few things. They're essentially design building this, so they're not going to provide us with construction document drawing levels. Essentially, you could do a not to exceed for the contract amount so that we're always working design backwards, that make them design backwards to fit it within the contingency. You know what I'm saying? Or you do add a contingency on top of that. Those are the two things, but we won't get a full CD package with this.
The nature of design build.
Absolutely.
Of course.
But if you wanted to authorize, say, a $10,000 contingency on this project, that what we could do is just say, like, we won't have to come back to you for any change orders under that amount.
I would certainly favor that. Obviously, this team has proven that you can stretch a penny till it has one side. So I'm great with it. I don't worry that any money would be needlessly spent for that. So
Anything to speed it up.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would, if we're talking contingencies, I would advise a 10% contingency across all three projects, if that's possible. Like allow a $25,000 authorization for anything above the bid amount. So 247 plus 25, because that's pretty much standard. Is that acceptable?
it is to me.
It is to me also. That's what we want to gear ourselves to. So you're
Thank
not
you.
back for a $9,000
I appreciate that.
authorization.
And some of these are a little bit weird, as you know, this one being a design build and coming from the outside, but yes, we want to put a contingency on every project that we do, just so we don't have to. You know, we appreciate the trust and we'll use it wisely.
The only thing I would add is just great appreciation to the Parks Foundation and to Cora for their advocacy for this project. It wouldn't be happening without that. So
100%.
thank you.
And we can certainly get part of the cover of the additional contingency.
Great,
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
It's awesome. I can't wait. This one's fun for our whole staff, just to let you all know. We love working on this one. So
So if we could have a motion to accept or to move forward with the $247,348 bid from Progressive Bicycle Ramps,
Plus 25,000 for this.
$25,000 to be used.
Motion. All right, second,
Second.
all in favor? Great. Thank you.
you did the motion.
Very exciting.
That was all the action items I have. I just wanted to touch on a couple big ones, if that's all right with you all, just to bring you up to speed on some of the biggest things that we're doing.
It's the best part of the meeting.
Appreciate that. Thank you. First, in keeping with what we're just talking about with the foundation, I want to say thanks again for all the work that they've done to help us with Glenway Park as it continues to grow. One of the items in the packet, Kate, I'm sorry, I'm flipping around like crazy, but I'm only going to mention two. So Glenway Park, I just want to let you all know, I think as of today, another grant application is due for $150,000 that you authorized to match a couple months ago. I've been working with Kara Shermer, who's
Yesterday.
All right.
Right.
excellent.
Hard copy mailed form.
Oh, that's
serious.
Get there by the 15th. Snail mail.
Single sided only.
So I just wanted to shout out to Kara Shermer, who is killing it already as our grant writer. Didn't have to do a whole lot, and there's a 30-page grant, that's going to help us get another $150,000 potentially to make that park even better. So.
Great.
So the exhibit you're seeing today is prepared essentially just for that grant application to share the big picture pieces of what we would do if we have all this money. The original $275,000 grant that the foundation helped secure is going to, if that was all the money we had, plus the 150 that you will authorize to spend with that, the project totals about $425,000. That would give us enough money to do a really, really nice playground in the exact spot where the existing playground is. Super nice new mantises, probably a couple ADA accessible features. The second piece of that would be the switchback that you see coming from the intersection of Brevy, bottom of your screen. About 130-foot Z ramp switchback coming up there. In preliminary design with our topographic equipment, we figured out that that is shown at about 7% right now, well within ADA guidelines, but even under that package, that is what I want to focus our money on, is getting ADA accessibility up to that playground. Why put a playground up there that kids in wheelchairs can't use, utilize, and be around their peers? So those are the two major items that we'll do under the base project, we'll say, is refurbish the playground completely, which was the intent of the original grant, and provide ADA accessibility to that playground. As we get more funds, we get to do more cool stuff. If we get additional funds, if this 150,000 comes through, that would allow us certainly to complete the ramp all the way around to the drinking fountain on the east side of your screen there, and likely move the playground and do some grading work. As you see, the whole cyan blue shaded area shows the limits of construction and the limits of a little bit of grading change we would do to flatten that field, make it more usable as a multi-sport play space, flatten it essentially so it drains well and is in the best condition possible to have pickup soccer games or cricket or anything else that you want to play, rugby up on top of there. And we would make the playground bigger and relocate it potentially to the north of the playground at the overlook, in part to act as a buffer a little bit for soccer balls that would come off of that end at the low spot over there. But also just to realign that with some of the more community and family events that we think we're going to do down the steps. There's a plateau right down that first set of steps that we've talked about activating either cornhole or some benches and pavilions, grills and things like that to put families all in the same spot at that part of the park. So the last thing I want to mention is the lighting. What we show there are essentially 14-foot tall lights, very similar to Lytle Park. The LEDs did that for a few reasons. One, light pollution. We don't want it to impact the neighborhood and the folks all the way around. I will also say that these lights aren't set in stone and can be, those same features can be accomplished with different and less amount of lights a little bit taller. So I show these in there in the same vein as Lytle Park, just to give everyone a reference. Those are shown at 50 feet apart and 14 feet wide. A common rule is you don't want to go any more than 3 feet, but 3 times as long as the light pole is high. So if I have a 15-foot tall light pole, I only go 45 or 50 feet between those in destination lighting. That's how that was laid out very, very preliminarily just for this grant to see how many of those do we need. So all in all, just to wrap up on that, this is the exhibit we put together just to show the folks that CARE is applying through this grant that we've done our homework on this, and these are the things we'd utilize given more opportunity and funding.
We're excited about this. I just want to again recognize Commissioner Nyer for being a real champion in this project, right? Was this a water tower site at one time?
It was called Tank Park, I believe. Jason and I did some community engagement. That's been a year ago now, probably, but we heard that story. We built some of this up, which is why we kind of thought about this. They artificially built some of this up to house that tank and put it at the right elevation for head pressure for the town. And it flooded before it ever even opened, I believe. The night before the grand opening, I think the tank broke and flooded Price Hill. I think it was the only time in history Price Hill has been flooded.
Would there be an opportunity to actually put some kind of like story marker there to tell that story?
Nothing would make me happier.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
We will work with CEV to make that happen.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges of this park 2 years ago plus was it was an island by elevation, by invasives, and something is going to happen in a park space, either something positive or something negative, and the configuration led to a lot of negative things happening. But isn't some regrading, the invasives are already toast, but there's a decent chunk of regrading just to naturally increase the visibility and the sort of authentic connection of the park to the neighborhood, correct?
100% right. So I went into this with Jason, he could tell you, I was like, we're gonna knock 5,000 yards off of this park just to get that visibility, because every time we toured this, he kept talking about these homes right here.
Right.
And not being able to see over this slope for basically no reason. Why did they do that? For the tank. There's no reason to do that. Now we have 50-year-old mature trees around the perimeter. So last year, as you know, they took the invasives out, which is what has spawned this project, in my opinion, activated this park more than anything. It's just getting those invasives so people can see what you have. So when we really looked at what we would do to grade this, this is my critical point. If I want to get ADA compliance up to this sidewalk. So I set that point at no more than 7% grade for my existing back here. That shows me what I would have to do to grade that. Funnily enough, even to save these trees, we're actually gonna back grade this way, back grade down a little bit this way, and really from this corner, shave all this just enough this way so it drains out this side. We're amounting to about 900 cubic yards of dirt. And that will create that visibility corridor through here. You see the limits of where I'm gonna grade. So you're still gonna have this barrier here to save some of these trees, but you're gonna be able to visibly see much, much better than you can right now. This little plateau that you see here is like a complete island where that tank was. Knocking that down just lets you see 4 more feet. So a combination of compromise across those things brought us to this point here.
That and the addition of the lighting, I think will have a huge impact on the nature of activity in that space.
We were out there a month ago. You can't write these stories because it's always amazing how we seem to bump into the perfect storyteller for the park every time we go. But we had the Trust for Public Land in town, who, by the way, are going to come and present to you all from New York City in September.
Great.
So that should be fun.
Exciting.
But they were in town in July and we took them around to see a lot of parks. We went to Owl's Nest to show them kind of sort of pavilion renovation, combining 2 cities or 2 neighborhoods and we're trying to do with Evanston and with East Walnut Hills and kind of, and then we showed them MLK and Season Good. It wasn't at that one, but we were at MLK and Season Good a week or 2 before, me and Joel and Jenny, right? And right as we walk up, these 3 guys that hang out in the park every day walk up and they're like, you guys gonna fix this park up? And then they just started giving us ideas and Joel's just like, what about this? What about this? And like, what about basketball courts? And we were getting great ideas just from walking through the park with logos on. But we get to Glenway and we've got all of these folks here from Trust for Public Land. And there's just a young guy running laps. He's got a sweatsuit on in the middle of summer. He's just clearly trying to like get in shape. And he's running laps and running laps. And finally he stops and he's like, you guys think about doing something here? He lives 10 houses away, him and his dad have. He's hung out in this park his whole life. And he was like, I can't believe how much different it is since you got rid of the invasives. So much easier to come up here. I've been running here my whole life, but now it's just looking, it feels different. And he was super excited. And as he went back to doing more laps, he was just like, I fully support it, whatever you want to do. And so we walked him through kind of the 4-point plan that Joel just outlaid. But it was just kind of fun to just bump into somebody that's like, it's already way different just from getting rid of the invasive species and getting rid of that like cave feeling that you had. Like you were in, like I always love going to TQL Stadium to watch FCC, and they've done a great job of making sure that noise does not escape, right? The noise stays in there. It is very loud. It is an experience. Well, that's what this had, except we don't want that experience in a park. We want it to be very open. We want you to have good sight lines. And by getting rid of those invasives, it's really opened it up. I do want to compliment, I'm sure he's not watching, but I do want to compliment Matt Hood and I'm going to blank on his name, but Jenny's going to help me. But our employee of the year last year is the crew leader that takes care of this area. Gerard Gray, here last year in the city manager's department awards. He's the crew leader for this. And I've been listening to Crystal's team about invasive species and how honeysuckle comes back and how aggressive it is. You can't find any honeysuckle here. They have been on top of it. They have been spraying, they've been cutting, they've been making sure that that initial investment stays good and has kept it from coming back. And the hillside just looks great. And you're starting to see some stuff start to eventually come back.
Speak to the safety factor. Huge increase in safety factor. And hopefully you're not finding used needles anymore.
Can't say we're not finding any, but the change of the neighborhood is unbelievable. And what you used to find by that playground was, again, according to Matt Hood and the team on the West, it was the #1 needle pickup site in the entire department. And Jenny can still find them. She's got an eye for it that I don't, but I have not found one there in the 2 or 3 times I've been back this year. So it's really changed it a lot.
I just can't help myself. I'll say, I've said this before about many of our other parks that need some help. That our parks can either, they both reflect the health of our city and they can direct the health of our city. And we are moving this into a position of directing the health of this neighborhood and providing it in an amenity, a safe space to have a healthy community, bring families in to build relationships with others and make it less of a space where we're entering and picking up needles. So this is an excellent project. I'm very excited about it. There's a ton of enthusiasm and.
Well, and in reviewing the grant application that Kara Shermer put together for us, I was reminded that this, because you don't necessarily notice when you're up on top of the hill, but this is less than a quarter mile from a school. And you think about the school has grounds and they got a playground and some fields themselves, but you think about the possibility down the road to turn this into a real nature education opportunity, to get kids over there, to get them outside, get them in the woods and around trees. It's a lot of opportunity. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Every kid outside.
Love it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I wasn't even gonna mention Inwood this month, but because of what we're talking about, I want to for a second. Just how we're thinking about going into this project, it's very methodical, has to be. What do we have to do first? One of the things I see is invasive removal. So I've talked to Crystal already about that and what that's going to take, even out of those the capital improvement funds that we already have in place. We need to get that done to see how that starts to activate everything else. Do some of the big studies that are within Inwood just to inform what we will ask a master planner or a master park planner to help us with in concept. So some of those include the wall. I talked to my friends at DOTE yesterday. We've got some phenomenal geotechnical engineers that work in this city. So a couple of those guys are going to stop by and even look to help us inform how we should go about either remediating that wall, which could have a massive impact on the rest of the park. Taking the wall out, do we even have the option to do something like that in concept? Those are the big picture things that we're trying to fix for Inwood right now. And one of the things, the reason I mentioned that is just because how powerful that invasive removal has been to me at Glenway, and seeing potentially the same thing happen at Inwood and maybe MLK beyond that, again, as they've tried to keep up with that for the past few years. Those are huge to me and things that as an engineer, I never really thought about before I got here, but now I see the power in those things. So just letting you know, we're thinking about that and how we're going to continue to activate more parks that have become a little bit dilapidated in certain spots with the same vein, and knowing what we learned at Glenway. So my 2 cents on Inwood.
Speaking of reflecting and directing, reflecting the health or directing the health, and there's no park that can do this more than Inwood.
So important.
So important. It's in a very dense part of the city and it's very visible to anyone who visits our city. This one, I'm just wondering if we should look at a rough schedule next month or the month after that shows us where we kick off a master plan, where we're getting community engagement to create some transparency around our approach of planning.
It's ironic that you say that, Molly, because we're going to get to the we're going to get to the 3-year forecast update here in a little bit, and you'll see a little bit of that rough sketch. But Joel's team, as you know, we've added a lot of people to Joel's team over the last year. And one of the people we've added is Kelly Denny, is a project manager for us. And in updating the 3-year forecast, they would pull out the first time they're doing, and Joel's have a better word for it than I do, but effectively it's a big flow chart.
Project flow chart.
Project flow chart. So I was close, of all of the steps of it. And so they haven't even let me dig into it yet because they're still getting it fancy, but they've just shown it on the screen. It's light blue. It has triangles and squares and circles, and I'm sure all those mean something different. And it all flows out from one. And so I think that we're probably pretty close to being able to show something real rough like that.
It made me smile because of all the ones I'm not ready for, this one's the one I'm least not ready for. I'll show you all next month. I actually wanted to show that one, but yeah, as Jason mentioned, she was certainly a strategic hire. Kelly, since she's even come here, is already a project management professional or PMP, which I am not even. So really, really cool that she's taken that leap into figuring out what we need to do, specifically just guiding her towards, what do we need to do to prioritize our projects better? We're running so many things. Her whole focus in life is how do we prioritize these better? And that's powerful for me to have that tool, someone focusing on that quite a bit of time.
And I would be remiss, since she's in the room, if I didn't point out that we also hired Kat McCormick, who's with our team, smiling right now and looking at her phone. But she's also part of the kind of our project management team, and she's helping. She works with Kate a lot to help make sure that the communication between when Joel and I are out running around and not thinking about our emails, the communication is still moving back and forth. She comes to us from recreation, and so she knows how the city works, and she's been really helpful. I mean, it's been great to see as we've added first some architects and some engineers, but now we've added some folks that really make the office run and really make it move smoothly. And so it's been a lot of what you're seeing is the result of behind the scenes work, but it's really been great.
It's also timely because we just met yesterday to talk about starting to rough out the engagement plan.
So, yeah, one of Kat's, who was also incredibly helpful, and I don't know, I can't even say the many ways she's helped already in the past 3. One of the things she's gonna do is being a liaison for us from P and D. She sits in all of our meetings and knows what's going on in every project, giving Rocky that same insight without me having to go to those meetings all the time and give up time I should be working on something else is so valuable. Kat is internally, because of her background with CRC, so good at connecting folks within the city, and that's where her strength lies and how she's really helping us so far. So we can't wait to see what else happens and how many things we get done because of that.
Great. Anything else you want to cover?
I think we should talk about Sinton for a minute, just to give you all an update on that.
Page 21.
Yep. Chris McGee and Andrew Campbell, my architect extraordinaires. Other concepts to kind of show operational focus and leadership, how this can all work together. The whole goal of this is to make a site that fortifies and strengthens our teams, not divides them. So as you can see here, we've got this shown. Chris is going to hand this off to KZF after our, kind of look through this to make sure it works operationally. So what you see here is the service center, which really hasn't changed in size, shape, or function, other than we're going to redo some of the offices inside of there to make it work better, to allow both the facilities team and the East operations folks to work out of that conditioned space. So Chris and Andrew have already put together what those changes will look like, and KZF is well aware, and you've already approved that change to allow for some of those internal building plans and walls inside of our contract. The auxiliary 1 building that you see on the screen is existing. That's what we lovingly refer to as the Taj Mahal. The auxiliary 2 building is the same size, and I believe they're shown at 44 by 88 feet. That is a new proposed building that we have been talking about before. The function of that has not been clear at all times of what that building is going to be used for. And now with facilities taking more of this site, that may be a building that's mostly used for facilities. At the back of the site is biochar, and we talked about many, many times moving this, and this is the second time we've moved this building. But in this month's conversations with all of the conveyor suppliers, with all the folks that are helping us with the equipment, with all the architects, we really feel now that this is a viable site and something that can be used. Where we are in design on that at this moment, Chris McGee and I met on Tuesday on biochar to talk through inch by inch, conveyor to conveyor piece of equipment. How do those function? How is it best set up on that site, knowing that we're going to put Sinton here? That is where we are. So by next week, we will have that final layout. We may try to take advantage of some of the grade change on that end of the site so that maybe the shredder sits up high and we can lessen some of our conveyors because of an 8-foot grade change across that. That's going to turn that building into a pole barn, potentially versus a PEMB. And we're talking to them pre-engineered metal building. And we're talking to the architects about that and the cost implications of those two things. Pole barns are pretty cheap and easy to build. So it may even save us money in that regard and get us what we need elevation wise by adding a new wall, which may save us even more money than that in the conveyors. So we're finalizing that footprint so that we know operationally how things will work. We're also very, very conscious right now about noise. We know that that shredder is going to be up there and in this facility. So it could mean that we put that inside. That's one of the things we're talking through with the conveyors and all the heights and clearances of the doors and the ceilings inside of those buildings. That's really where we are in figuring that out, those nuts and bolts, to get to the point where we can get Crystal and Sam on the same page operationally, ensure that those things work, the storage areas that we've identified work with that operation, and then we will run that engineering wise all the way through with KZF. I would expect you will see a revised version of this next month. Certainly the interior layout of how all the machinery will work, we'll show you a concept of that certainly next month. And then everything else we've refined between now and then on that. So that's where we are. We think water is certainly not dead. We won't say that. We have lots of stuff to do out there and, support of our green space team. We may even potentially, as Jason's mentioned a few times, look at access and how that benefits the whole staff with that. But for biochar, we feel like Sinton is the final spot. You all have any questions on that? A lot. That one's a huge one.
I just want to confirm a number that I believe I'd heard at one point. locating biochar here is plus or minus a $300,000 savings. And
It's at least that, Commissioner. It's a 300, we knew. When we just hit the road a year ago,
rolling out, that's huge. That's because of same function, same benefits,
even more so.
reduced capital cost is magnificent.
So yes, we won't have to, both of the previous sites that we looked at, Deal Road, when we thought facilities was gonna, or the green space team was gonna go there, that came with a $300,000 electrical upgrade, even from what they had out there. This order came with a $300,000 electrical upgrade from North Bend Road as well. So that was the whole point of putting that access road, really, was to get the power back there. If you don't need to do either one of those things, that's more like a $500,000 savings, just to not have to do that. The difference in this is you're not worried. The difference in moving it also here is you're not recovering the heat in generation of heat. You're recovering all the heat and generation of electricity. So as we were going to split that when we were at water, to kind of use the off heat of our boiler to go into the steam pipes in the existing boilers and circumvent all that. We don't have that same situation here as much. We're going to generate power through the ORC instead. That's really the only difference here. That may put us up for more advantages when you talk about the city needing, they have how many fleet vehicle, 2,000 vehicles in their fleet, something like that. We have to have chargers for them in the next 7 or 8 years. So that puts us very, very well positioned to upgrade those sites.
But to be clear, the construction costs have not been fully analyzed, so to state now what the savings would be, I think is preemptive. And the heat aspect, as far as electricity generation, was always part of the project. There is an element of that that could be a lost advantage.
Exactly what I meant. You're not doing that heat it's exactly right. We're not heating the building with heat. We're only generating everything from the ORC into electricity in this scenario.
And I'm
Electricity is being generated.
Yes, go ahead.
certainly don't mean to pin it down to a number, but just substantial savings that it's calling out all of the partners, all of the team internally. We should take a bow sometimes, and that's really good stuff to have. It's already a really good, innovative project that's demonstrates so many of the core values we want to live, but now to do it at potentially, hopefully, a substantial savings is even better.
Those are two costs we could just pull out.
That's the hope at this point.
Yeah.
Crystal's right. We don't know the final cost of biochar and what Centon and biochar together look like. As you know, they're two of our biggest projects separately. Put them together and that's
The timeline for that. I'm sorry.
for Centon.
No, for determining what the cost of this project is.
Total cost of the project.
Right.
As you know, KZF's been working towards Centon and the site with all of that stuff. That contract was renewed, I believe. They're working through finalizing that. So we were supposed to have costs now, essentially. KZF has the DD set of that done. Biochar obviously changes that. I don't know that we will know biochar costs for 60 days from right now, even rough order of magnitude, as we set all this stuff in motion. Really, we're going to be waiting on that cost of the building more than anything. The equipment is pretty much realized at this point. Everything that goes inside of the building, the conveyors are what I'm working through right now, and all that mechanical connection between all of those pieces, that will have a cost delta if we have to put a wall or separate grade to change that. Those conveyors are exactly what we don't know. But as soon as that gets finalized, your footprint of the buildings are finalized. That's when we will ask them for the DD essentially set with biochar as well. My guess that we could bring you realistic numbers is no earlier than November on the biochar piece of this. Centon with the site and the building on Centon, you may see before that.
Okay, biochar is going to be a huge success. There's no question in my mind that it isn't going to be an incredible winner. Does this site allow us for growth?
Absolutely, Mrs.
That's,
Castellini.
I was kind of curious about that.
If you look at the diagonal row of check boxes there below biochar, each of those cells is 20 by 20, just so you know, which is the size of this room. And the amount of chips that you can put in there is well more than Crystal is going to want to house. Say that the four larger ones that you see below biochar, like opposite biochar, those are 30 by 30 and covered. So we don't know that configuration yet. We're trying to figure out still, like I said, which side the shredder is going to go on. Is it going to go inside the building or outside of the building to mitigate noise? Once we know that, we will dedicate the storage based on that operationally for Crystal and Sam to operate that. And then it's set in stone and we move from there, tying down grade and doing everything. But yes, there's plenty of storage in our opinion, and we're going to tailor that storage for biochar and the operation as we figure out where the shredder goes.
One of the first things we wanted to do in laying this out was ensure biochar is awesome and we were all super excited about it, but our core function is what 90% of this site's going to be. We wanted to make sure that was taken care of and that we'd be able to accomplish that. And so we've kind of stretched out, we've loosened our belt as much as we can to show how many parking spots we have, what our max storage is, what the max footprint can be, because we needed to make sure that we weren't going to sacrifice anything operationally in order to put biochar there, which was kind of one of the most important pieces of deciding it there. Cost savings are important. It's centrally located. We think operationally it makes a lot of sense there. We think there's some really good synergies with having the East operations and facilities there. But number one was that it's not going to impact what we do day to day to take care of these parks. Once we realized that, now Joel and his team are going to dig into this. When we presented biochar in February, we had a lot of cost allowances because, again, as we explained then, we didn't know kind of what the final budget numbers would be, but we knew we wanted to show you the kind of match. And so I think when Commissioner Nyer talks about potential savings, some of those allowances were pretty big because of some of the big elements that now don't have to be in this. We still don't fully know, and so we'll see what that savings does realize. But it's also important to note that at that time, we still had about a $500,000 hole in the budget that we needed to make. And then we had several avenues to do that we illustrated. So hopefully all of this comes together really nicely and we do experience some of that savings. But those were some of the big picture things that we wanted to think through and wanted to show you guys. So we kind of went into this with our eyes wide open about what it can be. And we really do think this is going to be a much better site for it. So we're pretty excited.
Crystal, do you have anything to add?
I think we're still in the discovery phase. I think this is the concept is being brought to you. There's still a lot of details to work out. There are advantages and disadvantages for both sites. And I think that's really the part that we're at right now is these are boxes on an overview. You don't see topography. You don't see the actual footprint of what the building has become even after several design sessions. There's an 8-foot drop between the biochar building and that lower lot where wood chips would be stored. That's an so there's lots of elements to this to where I feel like at this point to say that this is being brought to you as the concept with aspects of it going to send being advantages to the project overall. There's still a lot of details to work out. And ultimately, anytime that we make these dramatic changes, the more dramatic your timeline becomes. So things just get shifted back. And I don't think that we have a full idea on what it's going to cost. Given that we've had it with enough, conditioning to realize these changes that we need to have.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been another long project, right? It's very complex. The vision for the project has changed substantially. I know you've learned a lot about the biochar equipment itself. What I heard when I asked the same question, do we have room for expansion, is that the biochar train or unit that we have narrowed in on, it has significant capacity and enough capacity to handle any amount that we would throw at it for the city of Cincinnati. The question then becomes, do we have enough storage space or is there a plan to move the output to another place? And I know, again, you've got all those things to work through. What I suggested, if you can, is before you're in a position to advance anything to this body for approval, that you have a high level of confidence on the plan that you set forth, only because we've been through so many rounds of, that sounds great, let's approve it, good. And we really haven't gotten past the discovery phase of this project yet, no matter where we've been. So I appreciate the caution and look forward to the point where we know substantially more than we know now. I think everybody likes the direction of the location and is hopeful that it can be a good solution for biochar.
It was one of the 3 original studies that we had. We fully vetted. We'll have fully vetted all of them by.
You're gonna know a lot.
I'll also say this is how the sausage is made and bringing it.
That's right.
Publicly every month is different than most people will see, in an actual engineering world. We wouldn't have brought it to you, but this is what it has to get input at certain times. So I apologize for any non-decision on our part, I guess.
No, it's a pioneering project. It's a lot to learn and a lot's changed about the biochar even since we started. So, all for the better. Great. Anything else for Joel? Or Joel, do you have anything else for us?
No, ma'am.
Crystal, come on up. It's been a while since we've heard from you. You're on the agenda for the Duke Pipeline Tree Evaluation Report.
More better shoes.
We expect you in those shoes. PNR.
You have the report in front of you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So as you all know, last fall, we brought the Duke gas line project to you. They were essentially replacing a pipe that ran from Coney Island to Magrish Nature Preserve. Stopped there and then picked up on Beachmont Avenue along Otto Arm Leader and then led up into Linwood in that neck of the woods. So we did a preliminary analysis of the construction limits to identify any potential natural resource assets that would be impacted based on their limits of disturbance. Surveyed every single tree that was there, mapped them out, put a value on that based upon the Council for Tree and Landscape Appraisers guides. We give a tree an appraised value. Presented that to Duke last year before we entered it into the right of entry for them to proceed with the project. They agreed to pay an amount not to exceed that 598,000 plus. Through that process, we were able to work with them to shift the pipeline to where the majority of the trees that were slated to be lost, most of them in Otto Arm Leader, were 100% retained by moving the line just a little, just within 10-15 feet of where they had originally proposed it. So with that, the majority of the trees that were lost were in Magrish, just kind of right around the entrance to the park. That is also where phase 2 of their pipeline replacement will begin. So either way, we would have lost what needed to be taken out there. There were a handful of trees that were in the right of way that were removed as well. Again, the project running from Coney Island all the way to Otto Arm Leader had various sections that were in the street too. So with that, the total compensatory value of those trees is just a little over $57,000. We'll be sending an invoice to Duke to pay that. That will go into Fund 428, our compensatory fund, and will be used to replace trees in these areas. We already have some sites slated for replacement, especially for the right-of-way areas. And then we'll do some more forest restoration once the second phase of the pipeline is finished over near Magrish. But all in all, this is the process that we've been using for the past 4 years as any developments coming in parks. It's right sizing the standards that we use in urban forestry with the standards that we're using in parks in the same manner, holding our own projects accountable as well as any development that happens on site.
And so the bottom line is there were two, and the numbers are on there and I pass it over, but it was like they were going to take out
283 trees.
And they only took out 44.
Mm-hmm.
So just we didn't get $600,000, which would have been nice, but we saved 240 some trees, and that's just a huge win. It's why we do what we do. Crystal and her team and even Joel were out there looking at these trees, evaluating them, spent about a week out there, I think, doing it quickly because Duke came to us at the last minute. But we saved a bunch of trees, and that's what we're about. So it's a really good success story.
Yeah, and also including our staff time. Historically, we would do these, it's one tree, one appraisal. This was a huge project. So pre and post appraisal is very time consuming, and just writing up the reports, all the aspects.
But that was included in the 65, whatever that they're paying.
Yes,
I think is one. I think it also, if I may, it establishes a discipline with Duke or anybody else. It sets a precedent, and we value things, whether we should or not, with a US dollar denomination. And by having $600,000, it's a big number. We saved 239 trees, if my math is correct. A lot of trees. That's the next time this comes around, because there are a lot of utilities, there are a lot of things come by parks I love having that precedent to point to that, and I just think it's a good process to have in place. So my compliments to everybody who supported that. I know it's not just you, but that's a great outcome. We weren't trying to tag a public utility. We were trying to be compensated for the value. And so it's good for them too.
Yeah.
They had less cost, which eventually comes back to consumers and citizens as well. So.
Yeah, it's different. It's different than how it's typically done in other departments, and that these areas are rated for their market value from a retail or a kind of, I guess, land value. We take it that extra step.
I want to add some kudos if I can, just because I see how it's changing future projects. Phase 2 of this, we've already walked. They're not going to do construction for a year. So we've got their attention now. We want to be involved in the process as early as possible. They're also going to shift their alignment of the next phase of that high pressure gas main, so that this won't become another $600,000-700,000 burden for Duke. At Stanberry Park, as we're talking about taking out old infrastructure, we're meeting on site with these folks a year before they want to do it and figuring out less invasive ways of removing dead and old infrastructure instead of coming in and bulldozing down a 40-foot path through it to get some old telephone poles out. We're going to let them cut them in place and then limb off the ones that potentially taking those A-frames out in Stanberry Park would hit a limb or something as those poles come out, but it's way better than taking out 50 trees to get the 2 old poles. So those kind of things, I already see the relationship changing just because of the leadership on Kristen's end. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Great outcome.
Pleasure.
I'm just curious about one thing. So mature trees are being taken out and it'll be replanted with what size?
It would be a typical landscape size, so 2-inch, nothing, we wouldn't plant anything larger than a 2-inch tree.
Okay. And then how are they going to be watered? And I mean, is that all factored into, because that they'll get to.
It really depends on the location. Like if we're doing a forest restoration, we're not going to be watering those trees. And if we do something that's in the right of way, we would be watering them species dependent. Also dependent upon the time of year. If we plant them in the fall versus in the spring, early spring versus late spring, kind of dictates that watering schedule. Essentially, you're watering to establish a tree. And really in the hottest parts of the year is when you're really focused on that.
Yeah. I was just curious.
But you bring up a great point, which is that the reason these trees are valued so highly is because that's irreplaceable canopy in the immediate sense, right? You can't plant enough trees to compensate for taking out one giant tree across the street here. And so we will plant the trees and those trees will eventually grow and generations after us will get that back. But that's why it's, to plant a tree is $200, $400. But we're charging them much.
The cost of putting in young trees and so on and keeping them nourished and so on so that they can grow is factored in.
It's all part of the replacement value, yes. So it's based upon the species itself has a value, the diameter of the tree and the condition of the tree, its canopy, its structure, its trunk, its root system, all those aspects are taken into account, as well as its location within the landscape for the appraisal process. And so, in addition to that, like what it would cost us to replace that tree if we were to use our own contract, that's a factor in the equation as well. So ultimately, you're through the trunk formula method, you are being compensated for not only the increased, residential or real estate value that a tree might bring to your landscape or to your home, but also for the environmental benefits that it's providing. When we've had these projects in the past, we've had, we had a BP project out in Tanglewood and they wanted to just pay lumber value. And we had to explain to them that as managers of these assets, we don't value these trees for their timber value. We value them for the environmental value that it provides to our community. And the trunk formula method is the closest method to that. So, yeah, it's been when I first started here, the project that's right across the street, we had all the trees that were going to be removed were identified and it was replacement on a 1-to-1 basis. So for every tree removed, they had to plan a tree in their landscaping. But that's a lot of value that was lost. And it could have substantially changed the outcome of the project, where it's very easy to start a construction project by going in and clearing slate.
Sure.
If you have to work around protected assets or there's a monetary value that you're going to have to expend because of that damage, you're more likely to do the preservation correctly. And that's really, that's the goal of the compensatory fund.
Okay, thanks.
That's like, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, I don't see Derek here.
Derek might be at the civil service meeting.
Okay,
Coincides.
sure he's thrilled to be there.
He would much rather be here, I'm sure. So you'll note just a couple quick things. We have 161 full-time employees on our team now. I believe since I've been here, that's the first time. The first two numbers have been 16 instead of 15. So I'm excited about that. 128 part-time folks.
We're on page 49.
Correct, page 49. Thank you. We have one retirement that just happened. Sheila Stump we said goodbye to her a couple weeks ago at a retirement party, and we've got one coming up. Thursday, the 28th, we're doing a retirement dinner for Robin Hunt, who has been the urban forestry supervisor for a while. We are currently interviewing for a lot of jobs, including there were interviews going on down by my office. As we started our meeting, we're interviewing for a Parks and Recreation Maintenance crew leader or a district crew leader for facilities, one for waterfront, and one for Crone Conservatory. We just finished up the interviews for the urban forestry supervisor yesterday, and we'll have that to announce here soon. And then Crystal and her team have just kicked off interviews for the director of Explore Nature. So a lot of big positions coming through the pipeline, plus all the other jobs that we're constantly interviewing for and taking folks off lists and promoting folks up through, including service area coordinator. So this is one of the events team that plan all the events through our waterfront division, but they plan events everywhere. This was a position that we funded in the budget a year ago, and we finally got it hired. Gabriel Bradford, or Gage Bradford, he's been a rec spec with us for a while and has worked on Lou's team as a part-timer while working for Hampton County Environmental Services. He joins that team. We're really excited. And then Tiffany Hendrickson also had been a Parks and Recreation specialist for us, a seasonal that worked at the Division of Natural Resources and now has been promoted into that role that Sheila Stump just retired from. So lots of change, but lots of good stuff. You'll see we've got 12 vacant positions right now that we're at some point of moving through, getting filled up, which again is one of the lower numbers we've had since I've been here. And then Derek always provides kind of the part-time overview of applications we've received and the hiring process for seasonal workers. We rely on so many seasonal workers, like we said in the first page, 128 currently on our team, that just the hiring and moving through of those folks is such a big process for all of our different divisions. And then you can see some safety overviews. Derek talked about that quite a bit last time, but we're continually trying to do efforts to make our team safer and to highlight safety and really push it and promote it. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hope my yard signs help me. The
The yard signs we hear about those all the time.
Well, congratulations and thanks to Robin. That's 32
Yeah.
years and a lot of trees.
Yep.
So that's a big career to be really proud of. I know that you all will miss him.
He started with urban forestry when it was part of public services,
DOT.
Department of Transportation. So
Amazing.
been through a lot. Yeah, he said he worked out of City Hall for a while when he first started. That's where the urban forestry team was out.
Well, good for him that he got out of there.
I'm just curious, can you talk about the director of Explore Nature, how those interviews are coming, and how many people are interested in it?
So we had well over 100 applicants, right? In fact, we had so many great applicants. We were really excited. There isn't, as you know, we work through the city's classification system, and getting classifications changes or modifications is very difficult. There isn't a great classification for awesome teacher program manager, right? So we spent some time finding the best one, and we've selected one that we used, but then we were really nervous that we wouldn't, when you read it, it says like supervising Parks and Recreation Coordinator, Business Administration, which doesn't sing.
Doesn't say what the job is.
But Rocky's team has worked with Crystal to develop a really good brochure and really good language that we can use in that to really promote what the job is. So we got well over 120, maybe 130 applicants. So many good ones that I think Crystal was getting nervous to narrow it down to a couple. And so I suggested what we did when we hired Kate, because we had 200 applicants for that job, was we did what I called speed dating. And so Jenny and I did like 15 or 16 15-minute interviews. So we can kind of get, you generally in an interview, you learn a lot about somebody in the first couple minutes. Does the resume match what they're projecting? Do they have some of the, just on some level, a lot of times when you're interviewing somebody and hiring somebody, you want somebody that you're going to get along with, that you want to meet at the coffee pot every day and you want to talk to, and you feel like we'll be just a good team member. So I think that's the piece that you're done with, or you're moving through right now, is that they're doing this kind of speed dating to come up with that final group of folks that will be interviewed. There'll then be an interview panel where they'll interview and get that down to 2 or 3, maybe 4. And then, as we did with the urban forestry supervisor, Crystal and I'll have coffee with the final candidates and make sure that we've got the perfect person for that job.
Great. Good. Any other questions on the HR update? All right, Jason, continue.
This is a pretty easy one. So I think we've talked a lot about some of the security issues that we face down at Smale Riverfront Park and Sawyer Point, Yeatman's Cove. Such big, beautiful, busy parks located on the riverfront, located right across the bridge from Northern Kentucky, located right at the base of the banks and the Central Business District. They just get a lot of folks in all hours of the night. And talking and working with the bank's community authority and working with the city of Cincinnati Police Department, the city managers, place-based initiatives manager who handles a lot of their homeless outreach. It became apparent that we needed a little bit more attention at the banks. So we put together a plan to hire. So we always have 2 security officers there every day of the week from 6 to midnight, or from 4 to midnight. So we have an 8-hour of 2 people every day of the year. And we've been doing that for years. It's about $200,000 or so. We wanted to get some additional attention and get some additional later attention. So we put together a plan. It started mid-July to do 2 additional security officers from 6 to 2 in the morning to have additional coverage in Smale and in Sawyer Point and Yeatman's Cove. And so this is the Smale family, through the Cincinnati Parks Foundation, generously agreed to fund that at a cost of about $15,000 for that additional coverage. We're going to see how that works for the rest of the summer. We have not had any major incidents in the parks this year, which has been really great. There have been a couple of really unfortunate incidents in the banks. Those 2 areas work very symbiotically. We've additionally done some physical changes to that area. We've added some additional lights to put lights right at the Walnut Street steps. We've added some additional signage in there to try to keep that area under control. But this has been a huge part of that strategy. And so we want to thank the Smale family and the Parks Foundation for helping us with that. And then we will see about starting it all year next year, depending on how we want to go with this. But
Jason, the park looks amazing. I mean, it just keeps looking better. The natural landscape there is absolutely gorgeous. Of all the city parks I've been to, I've never seen one more beautiful than Smale. It is outstanding. I noticed the security there the other night. There were lots of people after the Reds game, the winning Reds game, flowing through the park and enjoying a gorgeous night in a city. It was wonderful. I do have a question. There are several very mature trees that have been taken down there. What's going on?
So, I joke a lot, but my brother walks to the park all the time and he's always sending me texts of stuff.
Right.
And so I got a text from him that morning on his morning walk about 3 trees coming down. So I investigated into it. It is, Crystal's going to correct me, but we'll see how I do. Yellow elm. So these were elm trees that got yellow elm, right? Yellow elm. What's that?
Yellow elm's disease.
Yellow elm's disease. I think there were 4 that came down, 2 that had it, but then you always take out the tree next to it. They found it very quickly. Apparently the decay happens very quickly. And so we think that we have nipped it in the bud, very literally in this case. And so there will be some new trees that get planted there, hopefully this fall, to replace those ones. But it's all part of keeping it so beautiful is you got to make sure that if something goes wrong, you get it quick. So our team did a good job of that.
Everything looks great.
And that disease specifically spreads through grafting in the root system, which is why you have to cut down the trees next to it.
Oh, I see.
Trench around the area. There's been quite a few elms that have been lost out.
Yeah.
Are you saying they like touch kind of in the soil and that's
Yeah, the
transfer?
roots will connect and grow together, so they'll graft together. And
Okay.
so then they can pass that disease from one to the other.
Wow.
And even the material, whenever it's cut down and chipped, like that has to be taken to the dump versus being put back in your pile, otherwise it can be something that you pass on if you're mulching other trees. Biochar would inoculate it.
That's what I was gonna ask that question.
Kill it with fire.
Well, good to know. Thanks for keeping an eye out for that.
Tree security, people security, we're doing all kinds of security down there.
The security presence was evident and in a really positive,
Good.
supportive and helpful way. So it was great. Really great.
Well, if you would entertain a motion to accept this, or like I said, we've already kind of got started on it, but this will help us pay for it.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next up, I believe is events. Talk a lot, my mouth gets dry. Councilmember Mika Owens, huge champion of parks and of awesome things happening in parks, invited us to present at her committee during their August meeting. And so I went down Monday, the 5th to present to her committee. We often have so much work that we don't get a chance to kind of talk about some of the stuff we do that isn't controversial or doesn't need extra funds, that are just part of what we do day to day. And so President North, you've been talking to me about having more presentations and more educational things. So I thought this was a great opportunity to kind of run through this. And just take stock of exactly how much we're doing in parks. So every year we do about 750 community events. About 40% of those are park rentals. And so those are events like Pride, Black Diamond Reunion, which is kicking off tonight, the Flying Pig Marathon, Riverfest fireworks. These events where somebody comes in, they bring hundreds of thousands of people in, and we charge them for that. We also have partnership events. These are generally with the Parks Foundation or other community organizers like a community council or a CPAC, Parks Advisory Committee. And these are family-friendly events. We partner with them to, we waive the fees because it's free and open to the public. And we have a whole list of conditions you have to make them free and open to the public that provides equal access and all kinds of things. These are events like Trail Fest at Mount Airy Forest, which is coming up, yoga. We have tons of yoga throughout the community. These will be events like the Parks for Wellness that we saw a presentation about from our friends at the foundation recently. And then all of the programming at the skating rink. So it's all programming that we support and we don't charge anything for, but we still supply people for, we still provide litter support, all that. And then lastly, we have self-produced events. So this is something that we do a limited amount of, but we would like to do more and more. It's one of the reasons we brought on the new service area coordinator, which I talked about in Derek's report. This includes the All-American Birthday Bash, which are fireworks the week before the 4th of July or the Saturday on one end or the other of the 4th of July. The Alt Park fireworks this year were kind of a hybrid, which we self-produced it, but the community, we paid us to do that. And then we do tons of concerts like the Amped Up Music Series. Wednesdays in the Woods and Burnett Woods is paid for with some funds for this. And then just recently this year we did the last weekend, we did the On Point Music Festival.
Yeah.
The 2-day music festival at Sawyer Point. They had 17 bands over 2 days and was really successful and great. And also corresponded with some skating rink activation that was there. So those are kind of the 3 big things. On the next page, we also have our programming through Explore Nature. We have 6 nature centers and 5 naturalists. So we have Avon Woods, Bettman, Caldwell, California Woods, La Buena Woods, and then Trailside Nature Center in Burnett Woods. They host summer camps. We have 3 of the sites, California Woods, La Buena Woods, and Trailside have summer camps at those sites. The team from Caldwell does summer camps at different parks. So they do a couple weeks in Old Park, a couple weeks in French Park, and then they also do Mount Airy. So they move around in order to kind of spread our access. And then the Avon team goes around and does stuff with like CRC summer camps or with school summer camps or different programs to take our nature education out to them. And that's the Nature Connections, which it says there serves Title I schools. We also have just tons of family-friendly programming at our nature centers, all mostly led by the naturalists. These are guided themed nature hikes. Waffles in the Woods at California Woods is always a great one. We do scavenger hunts, just all kinds of really cool educational programming that we put on for folks. Last year, Explore Nature had 975 programs, served 26,589 people, almost 1,500 students, and over 1,300 summer campers. So just a tremendous output. And yet, the person we hired to run Explore Nature, I'm going to challenge him to do more. So next up, we've got our free event series. I mentioned these, amped up concerts at Sawyer Point, rocking the Roebling every Thursday night, on the Schmidlap lawn by Moorline Lager House. Moorline's been a great partner to help promote those and put those on. Always get good attendance there. Jazz at the Beer Garden at Bellevue Park, Westwood Town Hall live concerts, Hyatt Park acoustic lunch, music at the Castellini Esplanade every Saturday, all summer long. There's also a farmer's market there. Smale Rapid Run Family Fun Days, all the pickleball stuff that we do. And then, of course, yoga, like I mentioned. Crone Conservatory gets about 250,000 people annually. We've had 4 great shows this year. Mums, the Butterfly Show has 1 week left, and then Mums the Word will kick off August 31st and lead us into our annual holiday show, which is just always fantastic. So some event highlights. Underground Railroad Ravine to Freedom hike. This is really an amazing hike. I got to do it last year. And it's just really cool to understand how Hamilton Pike back then was part of the Underground Railroad and that ravine behind it that is La Buena Woods. Just a really cool story. There apparently was someone that didn't support the Underground Railroad Freedom, Underground Railroad, that was the gatekeeper for Hamilton Pike that charged the tolls. And he was actively helping slave catchers that would be looking for folks. And so that ravine became very, very powerful. And they take you down for that hike. They show you there's some houses there that they used to put a light up in the back of the house to let you know not to go up to Hamilton Pike and that there would be supplies along the ravine. So just really cool. The Great Eclipse in the Sky, we hosted at Smale Park, which was awesome. Earth Day celebrations at Smale Park, Spring Fest in Burnet Woods, the Flying Pig Marathon I mentioned before, National Kids to Park Day at French Park. With the foundation, we did Stereo 24 DJ Festival at Sawyer Point, which is a really cool event this year. And then Girl Scouts Believe in Girls Expo at Sawyer Point. On the next page, we did Juneteenth this year, always in Eden Park, always great. Pride at Sawyer Point, I mentioned. The Cincinnati Symphony at Ezra Charles Park. The All-American Birthday, we did 4th of July stuff, All-American Birthday Bash, Alt Park Fireworks, Sailor Park Bike Parade, fireworks at Inwood Park the day before the 4th. AfriFest in Cincinnati, or AfriFest Cincy, which was a Taste Africa at Sawyer Point just a couple weeks ago, was great. And then we have Shakespeare in the Park all throughout July and August, which is always a highlight. Stuff that's coming up. So I did this right before On Point Music Festival, but it has now happened. But On Point Music Festival was great. Coming up, I guess it'd be this Saturday, we have Forever Forward, the Black roller skating experience with Reggie, Premier Brown, and DJ D. I'm not an expert at DJs, but my understanding from talking to our friends at skating is they've really done a great job of bringing in DJs from around the country that are really well known, especially in the skating world, but even outside of that. Riverfest at Sawyer Point is coming up September 1st. Always a great event in partnership with Western Southern and iHeartRadio. Mount Airy Trail Fest, and then there's going to be music in Alt Park in September. It's a partnership with APAC for the Alt Park Advisory Committee. We couldn't be more excited to bring Oktoberfest Cincinnati to Sawyer Point this year. We hope that's going to be a partnership that's going to be with us for a long time to come, and it's going to really fuel kind of even a little bit of a reimagining of that area as we really bring our heritage to home there. Fest in Ezra Charles Park, which coincides with the 1 year, or it'll be now the 2 year anniversary of opening the Ezra Charles statue there. Hallow West Festival in Mount Airy. All kinds of Halloween stuff happens throughout the parks. And then, of course, I mentioned the Crone shows that are coming up, Mum's the Word and Solstice Flow. We took it as an opportunity to also promote our volunteer program. We had 4,900 volunteers last year, just unbelievable. And that's not even getting everybody, right? That's our best. It's not easy always to get a volunteer to go ahead and sign in and track their hours. But Crystal Johnson's done a fantastic job. She's been running our volunteer program for a couple of years now. It's just a real rock star. 41,600 hours of volunteering last year. And these are 2023 numbers. We did even better in 2024, which Rocky's team's compiling and will be in the annual report. All kinds of just amazing stuff that really just make our parks beautiful. When you say Smale looks beautiful, when you say any park looks beautiful, the volunteers are a big part of that. We even get some famous volunteers. You can see the mayor there. I don't know if we accurately tracked his 1 hour of work, but he was out at Inwood Park volunteering on the Mayor's Corporate Challenge Day, which was really great.
Job description.
Correct, yeah. I guess if he was getting paid, he was getting paid a city salary. So maybe he wasn't but he was at least leading our volunteers. And then last, Councilmember Owens has developed a bit of a partnership with Trust Fund Land herself. She was recently at one of their conferences up in Cleveland. We helped her connect with the state director. He met with her again when he was in town a couple weeks ago, and they're going to meet again when they're in town in September to present to us. So we just told them a little bit about, we want to continue to explain to them how we are trying to put equity at the forefront of everything we do. And we know city council also agrees with that. And we got a council that I think supports parks and trees and environment like never before. And so we always like to tell them all the stuff we're doing to try to be national leaders and to try to learn from others to do better stuff.
Well, then when is the next rating due to be?
Next summer. So we just came out and we fell a couple spots this year. We were 7th, but we've been in the top 10, 8th, but we've been in the top 10.
The submission goes in usually in mid-December and then they are announced in May.
Is Kroger doing their health thing at Dig?
They are doing their health thing. It is not in parks yet. I think they're trying to be lured to parks, but it's still going to be, I think it's moving to 5th Street this year, like Taste of Cincinnati.
And what is Mika Owens committee? What committee is that?
Is it on here? Climate. Yeah. CEI. So it says on the front CEI committee, but I guess it's a little bit like we do with CEV, where we say it like an acronym everybody knows too often, but it's climate, environment, and infrastructure. Council gets to organize themselves and create their own committees. So often the committees change from every 2 years when new council members come on, or when they reshuffle and the mayor makes new committee assignments, they'll group together different things that different council members want to be the leader on.
As I recall, one of the reasons that we fell in the rankings to 7 or was it 8 this year was because of the amount of investment we made in our parks. So from year to year, depending on how much we're approving for parks projects, those numbers can swing. But there are other strategic things that we can focus on. I mentioned earlier, dog parks were low in the rankings there, and it does move our rating somewhat for amenities. Would it be valuable or easy enough to put together kind of a 1-page summary on how we're performing against our peers in a way that can inform us on maybe some areas that we could shore up or consider shoring up?
Yep. And I think it's perfect timing because like I said, the Trust for Public Land is going to come in. The head of the park score is going to be the one presenting to us. And so I think it's a perfect time to have that conversation. Interestingly, we did fall in level of investment despite spending more money. So we spent more on a per citizen basis at our parks than we had the previous year, but other cities spent more than we did. And so even though we were doing better, because it's the top 100 cities, the score is aggregated. And that'll also be something that we'll see ups and downs based upon just when projects come through. So this year we're doing International Friendship Park for $2.5 million. We're going to be under construction for Senton for 4-ish, biochar for another $3 million facility. We've got a lot of stuff coming through and some big projects. So hopefully.
These are non-disputable data points when we're pushing for railroad money funding for some big projects that we have ahead.
Absolutely.
Years ago, the Trust for Public Lands, like their metrics changed, where they added equity and they started adding different features. And that's why, from my understanding, working with Matt on some of the data stuff, that's why we really more that those elements were added. So I think even if you were to even try to compare over time, keeping those metrics that were measured that in mind.
It's an important guide for us because this is an organization that understands more broadly about the role that parks are to play, the role that public land is to play in the lives of Americans. And we can use this as a resource for us to set direction when we're talking about what our 3-year plan is. So I think that would be very helpful and informative for us to all come to a shared view of. Thanks.
Great.
It was a slide, I'm thinking of the interactive, the 10-minute walk interactive map. Was that part of your presentation too?
It was, yep.
To see.
And I
Is that
emailed that to you.
public?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's
So if we go back to it, it's purple and has an underline, which means it's clickable in the world of PowerPoint presentations. But that is publicly available on the Trust for Public Lands website. And at some point, I sent this graphic to you guys with that link. It might have been a couple months back, but it was right around the time that came out. We pulled this graphic and we're using it in our capital budget presentations to the community, but we can certainly send it to you again. It's really cool because you can zoom into that. And you can see the real specifics of, so what you see on there is the green is where we have park space and green space. And then the purple to blue is where we have areas where you can't walk for 10 minutes to get to a park. And so we're using that to guide. We're not really at a new park space right now. I think we'd like to be eventually. But we're using it even to think about, are there parks where potentially, so say you walk up to a park and it's a sidewalk and then a hillside of invasive species. Well, that's not a park that you're not at a green space. But if we were to clear some invasive species, not even the whole hillside, but a path, create a plaza and steps, now you have access to that park. Certainly not accessibility because it would be steps, but we could potentially, for many people in the community, create a way to get to that park. And so when we get to a place of where can we add park space, can we grow our park system, we're going to be able to use this map to really look for opportunities.
The work being done in Glenway Park probably extends its bubble now because you can reach it in a 10-minute walk from more places because of the access improvements.
Jason, I want to add a little bit. We went to New York to meet with the TPO for the 10-minute accelerator program. That's what I took away from it, was a safe 10-minute walk. That's where they're talking now. Like Jason's exactly right. We're looking at all of our parks and even green spaces owned by the city. Where can we put an entrance into a park that gets us better and within a 10-minute walk for more citizens? Another thing we're doing is looking at health data. As you guys got a presentation, I believe, last month, looking at Children's Hospital in UC and aggregating data for where there are pockets of potential, what am I trying to say? If you have an elderly person's home or a school of the deaf, things like that, there may be different walk things that we put in place to make those specifically safe for that group of people, and trying to cater our green spaces and walk to our green spaces for those individuals throughout the city, so we can do that stuff. Those are the kind of things we're looking at as well, as access, as safe access, and adding amenities based on population.
And one of the things we're trying to think about is how do we classify the zone of a park, right? So you can use census tract data, you can just use neighborhood. One of the interesting things about all of the discussions on Burnett Woods is, I guess it's technically in Coreyville, but certainly Burnett Woods serves the entire community. It serves multiple different areas based upon where you live. And so some data that we have, not in this map, but is the 10-minute walkability to every green space. So if you click on a green space, we can show you down to the house what's included and what's not included. Now, what we're trying to do is if we can get that data from our health system, because that's not how they keep the data either, but they have it somewhere. How can we get that data to then overlay that? So one of the things we're working with the Trust for Public Land on is, what does equity mean? What is a park that has an equity need? So with the city of Cincinnati, when they did all of their capital stuff, they used neighborhoods with a median income of $50,000. And so when they reported on the spending for the railroad sale, they said that 75% or some number of percent of the money in the railroad money approved this summer in June is going to go to neighborhoods with $50,000 a median income or less.
Great.
Maybe that's right, maybe that's not right, but we're trying to make sure that we are both tracking it according to what the city tracks, but then also thinking of our own metrics to try to make sure we're making the right decisions that way as well. So when you look at Burnett Woods, for instance, the impact of it is much more like this, because, you know, depending on the entrance point, here are the areas you can walk to and get to it within 10 minutes, not just Coreyville or just Clifton or just Huff, or even Avondale has some areas that are a 10-minute walk to it. The other thing I'd say when Joel talks about safe access points, and I'll note that Cynthia Duvall that was here today and is active and engaging us, has been encouraging us to take a look at how do you get safely to Mount Airy. So Mount Airy serves very much like a regional park. Lots of times you just drive there. But there are a lot of neighborhoods where you're not that far away, but Coleraine Avenue is a very busy street. Like the streets that surround Mount Airy are very busy streets. And so we've had some conversations with the Department of Transportation about how we can work with them, because, you know, we don't do crosswalks, but we can help identify the spots where we think we have access. And And that's something that is definitely on, not quick enough for anybody, but it's definitely on our project list for the future as we dig into the 3-year plan. We've got several big investments that are going into Mount Airy, whether it's the bicycle skills course that you all approved today, whether it's everybody's treehouse that's getting improvement. Last, we put in an accessible spinner in partnership with the foundation. I think we repainted both of the lodges last year, and we've done some improvements there. We're looking at a new playground in McFarland, the McFarland entrance. And that's another partnership with the foundation. They've got a donor that's interested in helping us design kind of an adventure or a challenge playground. So we've been looking at McFarland Woods. McFarland Woods the McFarland Woods entrance to Mount Airy is at the southwest corner of Mount Airy. You can get lost thinking about where Mount Airy is, but it's very much in the Westwood area. Right down the street from it, there are tons of houses, lots of apartment buildings where you drive in and there's a complex of apartment buildings. There's no sidewalk that connects those apartment buildings to the entrance of McFarland Woods. So as we look at putting a playground there, well, guess what we'd like to do? A, can we get a raised crosswalk to the other side of the street? B, can we put in a sidewalk there that will that will make this much more of an accessible area? Again, not accessible ADA,
Sidewalk.
but a safe sidewalk that is separated from the street and a safe crosswalk. So these are things we're looking at when we do all of these projects, even the consternation back and forth of what we're doing in the middle of Burnett Woods to make a raised sidewalk. We want to make sure we're doing it right. We're trying to learn about it as we go, but we'll be looking for opportunities as we go through these projects around the 3-year plan to make sure that they're not just places you drive to, but they're places you can walk to easily.
Great. What's next, Jason?
Next up is the 3-year forecast update.
Very exciting. Has this been posted to our website yet?
It is not. This is, once we show it to you guys, I printed some that if folks wanted to see them, they could, but many of our spectators have left. The folded one is the one that we have out there. That's the one that you approved in December. We'll do that again this year. We'll present it to you in November, kind of a fully updated one for approval in December. This is our first update. And so my hope is to get on a once a year kind of update, approval in December, update in the June, July area. We're a month late on that this month, but it's our first time updating it. But you can start to see I left on there too, all of the data from before. So the first one started in the 4th quarter of 23, and then we've obviously gone through Q1 and Q2 of 24. At the very top, I gave you the printed out one so you kind of see where we were before, but at the very top, you can see that we've knocked out 6 projects. The Lytle Park renovation is complete. The sidewalks and lights are complete. Ludlow's DNR headquarters is complete. French House, Fleshman Gardens, and Washington Park Masonry all complete. And then the blue line kind of indicates the start of Q3, which just happened recently. And then you can see projects that are coming off pretty quickly. The Mount Echo Roof Pavilion is almost complete. There's some great pictures in your packet about that. All new wood, it's going to stand up forever. The Ludlow DNR garage, we just approved a little bit of extra money for that, but that should be complete in October or so of this year. The Alt Park Valley Trail, we're moving forward very quick on. Art Museum Drive, if you have any time to walk down here, is a fascinating project where they're putting in these big 3-foot across, like foundational pillars or
Concrete piles.
concrete piles.
Yeah.
It's going to make that such a better path throughout the park. That was a really troubling sidewalk. International Friendship Park is underway. We expect the hardscape to be complete this winter and the planting to be done, and it should be fully open by Q2 of next year. The Lytle Park Comfort Station, the Burnett Woods Dog Park, we're obviously in the fundraising phase of that and getting the contract done. Smale Lot 23 enhancements. We get 100% drawings back within the next couple of weeks. We expect in September, and then we'll put that out to bid October, November. We're hoping to get that under contract and started, as Joe likes to say, as soon as the Bengals Super Bowl run is over. The Mount Airy projects we talked about today, those projects we also hope to get done over the winter. I mean, that's going to be dependent upon the contracting and the schedule of the park or the skills course builder. Mount Airy Treehouse, we're still waiting to get back the structural engineering report from Schaefer, and then we'll have to bid that out. We're hoping that can be a winter project as well.
That'll be TPA too, Jason. So
Excellent.
Beacon's already got the structural engineer under contract. We're going to go right into bidding with them when they get those structural details done.
The Alt Park Playground, our friends at the Alt Park Advisory Committee are still raising money for that. We talked about biochar production in Sinton East. As you can see, that's going to line up with what Joel was talking about before, with kind of finishing designs this fall and then hopefully bidding that out over the winter. Glenway Park renovation we just talked about today, and we also talked about Inwood master plan. So you can see how just in a kind of what are we working on right now, what we're doing. The really cool thing that Joel's team's done in this update, which won't necessarily be on the public one that we put out kind of once Rocky's team makes it all pretty and we have them played. What we want to share with you is you see the second column, which says average P&D effort. And so what they're trying to calculate is how much work does it take to do these projects, right? Is this a project that we're doing 20 hours a week on amongst the team? Is this a project that, you know, we check off the plans, we stop by, we make sure things are good? It did go the other way?
It's just warm up in here.
Um,
Anybody feel warm?
it's a beautiful room, but a weird one. And so we've got that average effort to kind of give an indication of exactly how much. Additionally, Joel's team's got 7 people. So Kat, Kelly, Andrew and Chris are architects. Joel is the director, and then Ian and Matt is our engineering team. And so across these projects, that's 40 hours a week times 7 people. We can do math, that's 280 hours a week, right? But you'll note that when we add these up, that equals over the next 2 quarters, just those red numbers are 255 hours and 260 hours. That doesn't include helping out with doing a project that Crystal's working on or a land management. It doesn't include helping the Department of Transportation vet a project or do all the other work. So it gives a real indication of just what our throughput can be. And it's something we want to keep our eyes on as we continue to expect a lot out of ourselves, but also want to be realistic to the public. And when someone comes to us and says, can you take on this project? We're like, well, that's another 20 hours. Where does that come from?
I understand the P. What's the G?
Planning and design. Did I type it?
No, the P.
In this.
For partner.
Partnered.
That is, I think that's a G, it's a grant project. And so that's a project that we received a state grant for.
Do partner projects indicate? Is the number of hours of effort gross or net to our team with a partner project? Or
These numbers, John, are meant to indicate my team's burden per week.
your team's burden? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Community's burden, I assume a low project, like Mount Echo Pavilion roof that we're working on right now. Andrew's going out there 2-3 times a week looking at updates. We're drawing structural details to help the engineer, those kind of things. That's a low priority project for them at this point, and that is 10 hours a week for combined our staff. So we assume that we have 280 hours, like Jason said, for 100% we're working on capital improvement projects here. You know, that 10 hours a week is one of those projects, but only for my 7 folks.
And I note in Q4 of 24, we have 260 hours. But on the next step, we've got 140, so that's 400 hours. And as this group, as we look to, especially as we get more data and understanding, we'll get better refined on how many hours that way. But there's a capacity question that way. And if we have the ability to and a demonstrated sustained need for it, obviously that's where resources go to build capacity in that. I would hope to be using this data to help with decisions like that in coming quarters and years.
Exactly why we wanted to put it on here, right? So this is the first time, you know, Joel's team, since we started, been like, there's too much, right? And I'm like, great. And then we have these conversations where we're like, okay, what do you want to take off?
But why?
But we all love parks. So we're like, well, we can't take that off. We got to do that. Well, we can't take that off. So we're all running 100 miles an hour, but we're trying to do a better job of tracking it, and we'll get better at knowing that. But I think especially as we start to look at railroad dollars coming in next summer, you know, some of those can be used for the administration of those dollars as well. And so I think that as we head into winter months this year, as we start to get our budget requests ready for next year, that's when we can start to think about, do we need to add additional project management capacity to Joel's team? And we're going to be thinking those through. But it also allows.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry. We're going to get more efficient too. We know we've only had the 7 of us together for, at this point, less than a year for that whole team. So these numbers are not conservative by any means. We are spending this time on these projects, but they're not inflated to that point too. And we know some of these will go down too, because I can assign project managers to run some of these on their own. So just keeping that in mind. We do need more folks. It's hard for you guys to go advocate for us unless you know how many and why we need more folks. So all this is an attempt to try to show you that, not try to cry about too much work. We all want to do work. Everything that we do here is important, and we understand that, but also, if you guys can advocate for us, then we've got to give you those tools to be able to do so.
Well, we also know with projects like these, everything always takes more time than we think it will in every case, so. 400 hours may be more like 500 in reality.
So on the magic date for getting the money from the sale of the railroad, do we really have a date when we will
So-
get that amount?
The actuaries that that manage the money for the railroad, that will come up with what is a reasonable amount to spin off this year, report that to the city in September. And so the city will get some number in September. We've heard anything from, 50, I think they're supposed to hit 55 a year is the goal, at least 55 a year, but it could be more in a good year or less in a bad year. And it's been a pretty decent year in the stock market. So we're hoping we'll get that number in September. The city will then do its machinations to come up with how much is given to each department. Currently in July or in June, when they passed the budget, there was 29 million in railroad dollars, and we got 2.7 million of that. So a little under 10%. And then we got an additional allocation for the Senate Operations Center.
Is that closeout or railroad though?
That was the railroad part of the budget. Closeout will happen in September and October. We're hoping to get a little bit more money for Senate in that. So anyways, we're getting roughly 10-ish% of the railroad dollars last year. So if the number is 55 million, that would be about double what we got last year. And so we would go from 2.7 to 2.4, again, which is purely speculative, right? And we'll need to advocate with, and here's why we're at council talking about how we're making equitable decisions. Here's why we're trying to tell our story with a 3-year plan that's cogent, it's easy to understand, that has the buy-in of the park board, is that these are all tools that are going to help us lobby for those dollars. In preparation of the first presentation we had to council about capital budget in April, we submitted our work with the TPL, we submitted all of our planning. And what we heard back was that of all of the departments, we were the only ones that understood the assignment on the first go. And then I think they challenged them to step up the game. And you got to compliment Rocky and Joel for helping us to organize this stuff in the right way in order to get this stuff in front of you in a way that's pretty cogent. The other thing that's super important to note about this, right? And the reason why I have the old one and the new one is this stuff's all going to slide. As President North just said, these things all take longer than we thought. There are all kinds of things that are outside of our control that can make these things, but this gives a good indication of about where we're at. And it's basically like a report. We are reporting where we're at and how that's changing. And we won't be able to do everything on the timeline we hoped. We will always probably be a little bit more aggressive on hoping to get things done, but it really gives an indication of where we're at, what's coming up next, how much time it's going to take, how much planning we have to do this. I think even some of the stuff that has a lot of blue on the first one, the previous one, there's a little bit less blue on that. And we've said, look, we're not going to be able to plan that one just yet, right? And so currently we'll need your help to kind of make sure we're staying on the right big ones. The two really big ones that we've got ahead of us that are going to take a lot of time are Crone and Ball Park, the pavilion. We know those are two really big projects. But you can also see as we get down to this next up that, so we're starting the Inwood Master Plan project, but then we've got a couple of smaller projects like the Mount Airy Doris Day Dog Park. That one, you can see there's a little gap in the blue. That's because we've kind of got caught up on that one. And now we just have a capacity issue. So we're going to dig into that this winter. Bramble Park Trail, we've talked about. Gibson House and Burnett Woods Bandstand, those are two that are coming quick, but we will need some time to plan those out. The California Woods Hydrological Plan we've talked about. The Eden Park Steps by the Playhouse currently has nothing on here because we're waiting to get that design from the architects and from the donor, but eventually that will start to take up some time if that gets added on here. But then we get to some of the next big ones, right? Owl's Nest improvements, Smale River's Edge, MLK and Season Good, which we have some money set aside for. 2 playgrounds, Hoffner and Mount Airy and McFarland. We're not working on yet, but those are the next ones up. And then you can start to see that then we get into some big park master plans that we need to dig into in order to preserve these structures.
The riverfront marina
It's empty.
is
We have moved, as I reported a month ago or so, we've moved past the public input phase into the approval of the plans phase. And our partner at Hafner is working with his architect and engineer to hear that. They got into a holding pattern where it didn't make sense to spend money on plans until they knew that they were gonna get past that initial phase of we're allowed to move forward. So they're now ramping up the planning phase of that. We should be hearing more from them over the next several months.
Corps of Engineers has signed off.
They've signed off on we've gotten through the public improve, like the waterway looking at and the muscle studies and a lot of the public input. They put it out for public comment. We got those back. We responded to that, and that made it to the next stage that will all be part of their final plan and their final approval document. But the next phase is the drawings for the actual marina.
And where does the Corps of Engineers stand on our riverfront project?
We have great meetings with them every couple of weeks. That's moving forward really well. We just worked with the county, the bank's project manager is a gentleman by the name of Phil Beck, who's been awesome. He's been with the project since the beginning. He works for both the city and the county. We just had to go through and do kind of an accounting survey of all of the spending dollars on existing lot 23 that will serve as the match. That all went really well, and that project's moving forward. On here, it shows that planning decision document's done in June of next year. They continue to say it might be done this winter, which would be several months ahead of schedule. The opposite of everything taking too long, but that would be great. And so that project's moving along quickly, and it needs to. We had several flooding events this year, and if you go down there, the cliff is deeper. I joked last year when I first started, Joel doesn't want to hear it, that the cliff was one standard Joel size of cliff. I think it's a little bit more, or at least that depth is more spaces. We've let the growth there, some of the shrubbery, we haven't cleaned it back like we did before. And I think that's something we're gonna have to consider whether we do or not in order to try to shore that up as we head into next year. You know, we're not at threat level yet, but it's definitely, you can see why we're doing it, and we're losing more each year. So we had a very, very rainy year this year with a couple floods.
Jason, I know there is a lot unknown about the marina, but I do think that we've got to put an expectation on what that project is. It's been in the works for, I don't know how long, 6 years. Someone would probably tell me it's been 10, and I would be surprised and still believe them. So but we've got to have something in here and push on the components that move this ahead. I think it's important for us to be able to answer the question, when are we going to have a marina? I understand that things can change, that move or shift that date, but it's just not an answer that we can provide. And as commissioners, we get asked this question, and it's perennially, we cannot answer the question.
Yeah.
We're accountable for that.
I agree, and I'm accountable for it too, and I wish I had more answers for you, but I don't. But I think it's important for me to hear that from you and for me to be able to communicate that to our partner.
Something that we need to know and understand. And if there's a time when it's important for us to hear from them too.
100%.
We welcome them to attend a meeting and hear from them what they're working on and moving this forward. So I think we would welcome that. I would like the opportunity to study this and digest it, maybe come back with questions next month.
Absolutely.
Where we advance this for approval, because I think we want support for this being the plan for us. This having been the first time we've seen this refresh, I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely. And again, my hope is that we kind of approve it once, like every December, but then we provide more periodic updates than this, or at least, you know, it's been about 8 months since it's been done, but it's also the first time we've updated it. When we made the first plan, that was kind of our first go at that. There's obviously, the font is much smaller. There are many more lines than there used to be, as is the case with these things, but we've also knocked some off the top. And so,
I think once a year is adequate.
yeah, for like approval, yeah, but we want to then at least move the border over and kind of make sure we're always kind of keeping our eye on it.
At least for a while, I would encourage you to leave the completed ones on here. I think that's important to demonstrate what progress has been done. So it'll get too small at some point, but for a while, I'd keep leaving them on there.
It's fun.
It's easy to forget, well, what have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
So,
yep.
And it's a lot, so.
Absolutely.
I know I'm stating the obvious, but this has been extremely like way in which we did over the last 8 months. Public, down there at city council, talking about capital needs, talking to community members, we're approaching projects, because on and on, it's had this extreme level of value, and really happy to have it, excited to be.
And as a team, understanding priorities on projects.
you know, we pull this out all the time. That was like, so it is a living, but having it presented in this way.
Well, and what's gonna be fun for all of us, I think, is so coincidentally, this is my 24th meeting, so I'm not into 2 years yet, but it is my 24th meeting since I've been with you guys. It's only Joel's maybe 28th or 29th, right? Joel started.
Hey, Susie.
2005.
What's gonna be really fun is that the stuff that's in the works, a lot of the stuff predates Joel or I. And some of the stuff we've started to be able to prioritize, like biochar, I feel like we've been able to put some emphasis behind Sentin, but even those were started beforehand. And I think we've prioritized them amongst the stuff. But once we get below this year, we're really gonna start to, with the addition of the railroad money, we as a team are really gonna start to decide what's next and to really have some hard conversations about what is next. What is, do we want to invest in this? Do we want to invest in that? How do we want to start to look at new and different parks? Do we want to get community input in how to discuss that, and how to prioritize that? Do we want to take this show on the road? And we kind of got we always call this the 3-year forecast. We kind of got the next 3 years of construction, but we can now start to talk about what should we be planning for year 4, 5, 6, 7, hopefully many more years to come.
Great.
So.
Jason, for me, if you could update the information on the back.
Yep, that's the plan as well.
That's a great cheat sheet.
Yeah, terrific. The Futures Commission, we do need to address. And let our opinion be known once we have an opinion. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Is that, I guess I don't know, is there a body? The Futures Commission itself completed the report and does not meet anymore, is that correct?
That is correct.
So council is the body that sort of ideas of that are rolling up to for evaluation and implementation or projection or whatever. And so.
There was another article in the newspaper recently addressing it and saying.
So the city manager put out a report that was vetted by the mayor with some direction, or maybe the mayor put out a report from the city manager that I can share with you guys. It only mentions a couple things about parks specifically. One is that it would be up to the various boards and commissions, both us, recreation, and Great Parks, to discuss any sort of a park property transfer. I haven't yet talked to anybody that is advocating for transferring either Mount Airy Forest or French Park to Great Parks. In talking to Great Parks, they don't have the funding to accept the management of those parks. I don't know that anybody believes that it would have a giant cost savings overall. As far as the increasing coordination with rec and between parks and rec, we've had some initial conversations with the recreation department about that. And I think now that the mayor has released his kind of first take on it, we'll start to kind of continue to move towards coming up with any sort of recommended efficiencies that we can have. I'm skeptical that there's giant efficiencies. I've tried to think of it from the standard of how do we provide the best services to citizens? And I think that if we start with that as our kind of guiding principle, I would posit that as land managers, we are much better at providing beautiful landscapes than rec is. And that's no slight against rec. Rec is focused on people. Rec is focused on kids. Rec is focused on activities. The Rec at Night program they're doing from 6 to 10 o'clock at 2 recreation centers all summer long has been hugely successful, giving kids positive activity to do. They just did a 3-on-3 basketball tournament on Saturday, sponsored by the mayor, that I volunteered at a little bit. It was an awesome event. Kids playing basketball, having a great time.
And if I may, because I know we're pushing on time, I don't think that we'll be in a position to address what Commissioner Castellini has offered in this meeting, but I have a request.
Yes, that's the
To
point.
address it.
I think we need to get a message
Yeah,
to council that we're not ignoring it.
yes. I mean, there were really, I think, 3 major components to the future's recommendations that affect parks. One was identify, which you were just beginning to address, identify some ways that Parks and Rec can work more closely together to gain financial efficiencies. And I do agree with you that there is an opportunity to do that, which may also provide more impact for citizens. The second was look at a couple of the assets that are owned by parks and managed by rec, which includes some of the golf courses, and determine whether those can be sold or otherwise commercialized in a way that provides benefit to the city. There were some other assets in that category. And then the third, as you say, was look to whether some of our more regionally oriented parks are more efficiently or effectively managed by great parks.
Hmm.
And I know that there have been some conversations that have been had, but I do think that we probably need to officially take a position on this based on some evaluation on those components. The second one probably being solely within the recs.
Okay.
So I do agree with you that we determined that we would need to be responsive to that, whether it be directed by the mayor or just directed by the commission here. I'd like to see that. So we do need more time than the hours that you put on this to do things like this, right?
Make sure you register your hours as volunteers.
That's right. All right. Good point. It's director comment time.
Yes.
If additional items that you'd like to review with us.
I will run through it quick because we've talked about a lot of it. Butterfly show ends this weekend. Mum the Word starts August 31st. Relief program. Everybody loves relief program. We've given out 40 different species, 25,000 trees over the last 37 years. This year we have 1,000 tulip trees, wafer ashes, American plums, and 6 other species. Neighborhood, so our low canopy neighborhoods, the registration opens on September 7th. For general registration, that's September 21st, so that's fast approaching. Outreach events, just want to compliment Rocky's team. I've challenged them to do a lot more like outreach tabling at events and stuff, and they've really done a great job of that. They just were at Paddle Fest earlier this month. They had a booth at the Friday night preview with the foundation. They were at the neighborhood summit. The city managers rock the block events we've been really active in. We've also been at Councilmember Owen's social service days, and we've helped with that. So just a really great work, kind of taking the message apart out to the community. We do have a really cool one. So these are some of the tabling events. You can see our turtles have been on the road. And if you go to the next one, so our counselors in training are kids 13 and up that are counselors at our summer camps. And we did a really cool video that we made. Okay. Sounds up.
My name is Jackson.
I wanted to be a CIT because I have a lot of volunteer steps when I was little, and it gives me an opportunity to work with children.
Originally, it seemed like a easy and fun way to get my volunteer hours for school. And then once I met those, I kept coming back and I really enjoyed it.
The most rewarding part about being a CIT was probably the chance to make friends and get connected with other people in the community. Also, you get to work with kids, and people like it.
I don't think most of the part is in my walk, but it's also.
The most rewarding part about being a CIT is make sure that all these campers have the same enjoyable and fun experience that I did when I was a camper here. Advice I would give to an upcoming CIT would be take it all seriously, but at the same time, have as much fun as you can and just be yourself.
It's a really good opportunity to learn leadership and learn about nature and to be with kids. The last allegation from the James Field program is pass on the kids to the really easy.
So that's just an awesome video, right? So much fun. We're also going to use that to recruit new volunteers in the future. Just real quick, I did a whole presentation about events, but Black Friday Reunion starts tonight. Riverfest fireworks coming up in 2 weeks. Trail Fest is September 7th. Caterpillar Month Treasure Hunt at California Woods is Friday, September 13th. Oktoberfest is coming September 19th, and Bluegrass and Barbecue at Alms Park is September 29th. So just some great events coming. We'll send those out to you with some details for you. But
Awesome.
I think we mentioned the last month, but it's really my laptop, but tonight is the CPAC meeting.
oh, correct.
All the CPACs we bring together throughout the year at different times. That's happening tonight. And the focus is going to be on conservation land management.
And that's it. Theodore M. Berry International Friendship Park Pavilion. Tonight at 5, I believe, 5:30. That's all I got for you. Like I said, it's my 24th meeting. It's been just an honor to get to work with you guys for this short amount of time. I hope to keep doing it for a long time. I'm having a blast.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, the floor is yours.
Nothing for me, thank you. I have to say one thing. I'm very sad that the Burnett Woods folks don't stick around for the whole meeting and get a sense of the whole picture. I think it would help them.
I have no more. Our next meeting is Thursday, September 19th at 9 a.m.
I've been talking, moving, I thought.
You had mentioned,
October.
October's one. Okay, cool.
October.
Excellent.
I'm always looking way ahead, way ahead. Oh,
That's for that not to be my schedule.
I'll send that out as a potential reschedule, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll take a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. See you all next month.
Thank you.